A very warm welcome to all of you to the Business Today Most Powerful Women event. Since 2003, we have celebrated the achievement of our winners with a grand event in Mumbai. Due to the corona crisis, this is currently not possible. But you know what they say, never waste a good crisis. So we took our Most Powerful Women event virtual. And it has been a fantastically enriching experience. Of course, we miss the energy of all of us together in one room. I mean, that is just amazing. But the virtual experience hasn't been too bad. We've had the chance to interact with so many of the winners one-on-one. And that has been one of the most enriching experiences of the corona quarantine period for me. We have been doing this list for the last 17 years. The changes that have happened in these last 17 years are so telling. In the early days, our master list would be of 100 women. This year, our master list was of 200. I am so happy about the fact that the master list has grown to almost double. When Business Today started this list, most of the women came from the banking sector. I am so happy to note that our list has expanded exponentially in terms of diversity. Today, our list boasts of the most diverse set of leaders coming in from the fields of science, manufacturing, legal, NASA, robotics, and AI. And so many entrepreneurs. I'm also happy to note that we have our own Hall of Fame, which has 24 luminaries. These are women who have been on our most powerful list for 7 years. This year, to accommodate and adapt the amazing body of work done by women, we have introduced 2 new categories, Rising Stars and India's Most Powerful Women Abroad. This is just the beginning. Women are still grossly underrepresented in corporate boards in India and globally. In fact, only 4.4% of global CEOs are women. Our work is cut out. There is a long way to go to bring real diversity at the workplace and in boardrooms. So I think the award function today has come at a very apt time. There are many trends that were on their way up or down that have got accelerated by the coronavirus. One of those trends is women in leadership roles. Uncertain times needs a different kind of leadership, a leadership that is more empathetic, collaborative, and instinctive. When you're dealing with the well-being of your colleagues and their families, you have to lead with empathy. If you don't, your decisions can have drastic and long-term impact. When you're acting without data, without any information, without any precedent, just a black hole of uncertainty, you have to rely on your instinct. And because this pandemic has affected every aspect of our life, we have to work with each other. We have to bring different departments, different vendors, different partners together to collaborate, to continue to do the work we used to do. All these 3 traits, empathy, collaboration, and instinct, are trademark of women leaders. This is not me being biased. This is based on objective data. Just look at the countries that are led by women leaders like Germany, South Korea, Taiwan, New Zealand. They have all fared far better in the corona pandemic than other countries led by male leaders. So I want to say to all the women out there that our time is here. And it starts, though is not limited to this amazing list.
Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai.
When you change to an electric car, you reduce pollution, both outside and inside. Change what you can with the MG ZS EV.
डिशवॉशर है ना?
जितनी स्क्रबिंग उतनी सफाई।
इसमें आपके बेटे ने दाल मखनी जलाई थी, फिर भी चकाचक।
बॉश इंडियन किचन का डिशवॉशर।
We begin the day with a panel discussion on smart living and how technology is impacting and changing lives. Well, we've all lived through these last 6 months. We all know that our lifestyle choices, the way we consume information, the way we are educating our children, all of that has become virtual. So let's take a look at how technology is going to further transform our lives. Our first panel discussion, Smart Living, sponsored by Bosch Home Appliances. We have with us Ms. Meenakshi Menon, co-founder of Way Beyond Media, and Ms. Alpana Parida, founder of Tivera Ventures. Can I please invite Mr. Rajiv Dubey, editor of Business Today and managing editor of Business TV Today Network, to please moderate this discussion.
Welcome to this panel discussion on living smartly, smart living with gadgets and smart living to multitask. This is part of Business Today's India's most powerful women virtual conclave that Business Today is hosting. I have with me two panelists, very outspoken panelists. Alpana Parida is the founder of Tivera Ventures, and Meenakshi Menon is the co-founder of Way Beyond Media. So welcome to both of you. And I wanted to start with gadgets, living with gadgets and multitasking with gadgets. How has your experience been in this phase of work from home, using gadgets to multitask, and especially because the pandemic is currently in full force, and at the same time the economy is also opening up, and so one has to be very smart about using work from home and work from office, which all of us are juggling with at times. And in between come the gadgets. So using them very smartly to be able to make the most of it. Alpana, would you like to start with?
Sure. Thanks, Rajiv. Good to be here. I think gadgets, all gadgets have largely worked to compress either space or time. And during this period, both have been necessary. So, virtually being connected with people, whether it's work or whether it's friends and family, digitally we've been connected, including this meeting. We are doing this online. So that has been a huge boon. And the time that you have during the lockdown, you also didn't have the kind of help you had. So there was a lot of household gadgets. I remember early on in the lockdown, meeting a neighbor who told me that she'd invested in a Roomba, which was, I think it's one of those motorized floor cleaners. And so I think gadgets of all kinds seem to have made inroads during this time, depending on, of course, the socio-economic capability or possibilities.
Meenakshi?
Yeah, I would articulate it slightly differently, Rajiv. I mean, technology is what has actually transformed lives during the lockdown. Gadgets are important, but the gadgets per se, I mean, we're not a very gadget-friendly country in any case. People, there's the odd person who talks about buying a dishwasher because the maid's not coming in, and like the ground cleaning robo. But the fact of the matter is technology has transformed everybody's lives. And, while gadgets may be limited to a very small section at the top of the pyramid, but technology has transformed the lives of, probably 800 of the 1.3 billion Indians during the lockdown. So whether it was, train timings, whether it was availability of buses, whether it's job availability, and for me, that's what's fascinating, because that really goes to show that ultimately, in the face of adversity, people can adapt. And that's the fundamental truth that, is transforming all our lives.
How important have gadgets been for you in the past, and what has changed now?
I think that at a larger level, beyond gadgets, I think we are sort of understanding the need to be much more self-reliant. And I think an average middle class, upper middle class home in India uh, did not know, unlike the rest of the Western world, how to be self-reliant. The world would come crashing down if you didn't have domestic help, if you didn't have a driver, if you didn't have a lot of help that is required, is not entirely necessary. I think various other things also became unnecessary. It's not just, it's the whole idea of acquisitions of various kinds, and therefore uh, buying necessities through online, whereas what are not necessities, I think those behaviors changed, and categories such as fashion and categories such as beauty, personal care saw the hit because consumers found that not everything was as necessary. So I think there was been a sort of back to basics at some level in terms of behaviors, and yet there is a reliance on maybe gadgets to help further the cause of self-reliance. So it's been at both levels. But I agree with Meenakshi. I think technology is possibly a better way of identifying this rather than just purely gadgets.
Okay, Nakshi.
Yeah, also, if you look at it, Rajiv, Alpana, at the end of the day, we talk about domestics and we talk about, let's say, drivers, but they're all part of the ecosystem. I mean, today, if there were no jobs for maids and no jobs for drivers, there would be a huge big chunk of our population that would be unemployed. And that population, people in the middle class actually have, in my opinion, a social responsibility to the people who are maids and drivers. So I honestly don't see a permanent, a gadget replacing domestic help, right? It may be temporarily. The second thing is gadgets, again, are dependent on electricity. Home gadgets, domestic gadgets, when you don't have power for hours and hours and hours, what are you going to do? Schedule your dishwash when there is power? What happens when you don't have water? So, like Alpana said, in the West, you take these things for granted. In India, you cannot afford to say, bijli rahegi 24 ghanta, 24/7, or pani rahega. So, you have timings, you have this. So, within all these constraints of our reality, the domestic help becomes fundamental, not only as our assistance to us, but also as part of our ability to contribute to the well-being of everybody else. I mean, sometimes I'm shocked. I live on my own. I have 6 different helpers who work with me.
Okay.
And it's not that I need them, but it's that I believe that I'm giving them a better life. So, that's a different perspective.
Were there things that were good to have earlier, which are absolute necessity now? I mean, you just can't do without.
Let me add to that. For instance, my driver, okay, he used to use public transport, but now he's had to buy a second-hand two-wheeler, right? So this whole change is impacting people in many different ways. So, for instance, I find that the guys who used to work in my office, the office assistants, as we call them, right? They were not familiar with mail, because when does an office assistant actually use mail? But now, because they have to take instructions over mail, they've become very familiar with mail. They've become extremely familiar with phones. They've actually had to upgrade their phones. So if they didn't have smartphones, they've had to go and buy a smartphone so that they could actually deliver the service that they are being paid for.
Right. I think more than gadgets, what has really changed is, I think, the entire shopping behavior. And right through the lockdown, the only way you could get supplies, including essential supplies, was through online, purchase. And I think that just as demonetization gave a huge fillip to digital payments, I think a lot of online sites have seen a huge impetus because of this. And so this will probably shape the retail industry in many ways as well. It'll shape, today the malls are all struggling. I think restaurants are struggling. The order at home, and therefore, how can experiences be delivered at home? It's not right now just food and products are being delivered, but can there be a delivery of experiences? So I think this will shape many things, and there could be newer opportunities for many businesses that we're not even able to see right now.
Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai.
What are you looking at, Dad?
4WD.
4 weird doodles?
No! 4-wheel
drive.
MG Gloucester. Bookings now open.
डिशवॉशर है ना?
जितनी स्क्रबिंग उतनी सफाई।
इसमें आपके बेटे ने दाल मखनी जलाई थी, फिर भी चकाचक।
Bosch, Indian kitchen का dishwasher.
A lot of marketers are called crunch buying right now, basically, and people and many of them are suggesting that this is right after the lockdown or unlockdown that you're seeing this crunch buying, and suddenly there's going to be a sudden dip, and which I think is being experienced in some of the segments of the market. So the worry is that do you think that there are appliances or home appliances which have helped you multitask or achieve your goals of efficiency or productivity, or gadgets, any of those which have helped you do this to live smartly?
So I think apart from that occasional examples such as a Roomba, I don't think people went out and bought new gadgets. They had what they had. I think they simply learned to apply them more. So I have a friend who Meenakshi, we just talked about them, who had a dishwasher, but they never used it. They began to use it, right? So I think it's not just having the gadgets, but it's using them a lot more yourself. Maybe that changed. I think the other thing that changed is, and I had a lot of people tell me that because there was so much self-reliance on what you had and the gadgets you had, you began experimenting a lot more. I think that happened in cooking, that happened in even your cleaning systems, basic household things, because you didn't rely on somebody else, but you brought in your own intelligence. So I think it was the application of a lot of these that improved. I'm not sure if per se the demand for them went up drastically.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Rajiv, because you see there is a slight blip in demand for white goods today. If we look at it, we are seeing more dishwashers were sold, more washing machines were sold, but that's just a slight blip, and I don't see that being sustained. Okay, honestly, today, in fact, like Alpana said, in most places, most cities, except in containment zones where things are still under control, but in most other places, people are now allowing domestics to come in, and everybody's heaving a sigh of relief and saying, okay, I'm going back to my normal. What has changed is consumption patterns. It's very clear. Things like fashion. I mean, if you're not going to be going out, why would you want to buy garments, right? If you're sitting at home and doing Skype calls and meetings, maybe you just wear a top and you don't wear trousers or whatever. The fact of the matter is, consumption has changed dramatically. And that is fundamental to the way marketers approach the market. It's fundamental to the way consumers respond to the market. And there are a lot of these changes are actually going to stay with us. Even if Corona, reduces, even if things change, there are going to be fundamental shifts taking place.
So, how do you see this, playing out? Are you seeing fundamental behavioral changes? Are you seeing any very significant fundamental changes that are taking place right now?
I think certainly the concept of ownership and how much and the idea of acquisition, that is taking a fundamental shift because nobody's seeing. Is this going to go away? Someday it will, but it will, when COVID disappears, people will be back. But does it mean that everything comes back to normal? I think the impact of this is going to be so deep on our psyche. We don't really understand the ramifications. It's like the world wars that impacted an entire generation. I think this is a worldwide impact that people are going to see. And millennials who never grew up imagining that there could be any difficulties in life are possibly going to be wired differently to begin with. So I see self-reliance in some ways playing out in many ways, in how you do your work, in how you plan your ecosystem, in how you plan your supply chain. You make it smaller and narrower, more predictable. What kind of holidays people take, what kind of partners they choose. I think a lot more is going to be geographically determined as well. So there will be enormous amount of changes that I see in the coming days. The way we the experiences that we will seek will be a combination of the virtual and the physical. So, there are family groups that meet and do online antaksharis, and there are more and more such apps that allow for greater meeting. And I found that actually during this period, I have been more in touch with people who have been overseas and I have been away than I would have been otherwise, because otherwise you just wait till you meet them. And here you make the effort to meet and you could catch up with a lot of people.
Sure.
So all of this will ladder into consumption behavior, which will be fundamentally different. And I think we'll have to see how that plays out. But yes, there are many opportunities for innovation right now.
So personal consumption, is going to change, has changed and is going to change. What do I need? What do I use as a consumer? Social consumption is at zero. So when I consume for society to, see what I'm consuming, the whole business of, maybe the big fat Indian wedding, maybe this is the end of the big fat Indian wedding, at least for some time, because there's no point in conspicuous consumption. What's also going to happen is, like Alpana said, this whole thing of families coming together has actually moved beyond just families. So it's families, it's communities. So in some way, the pivots, the nodal points of our existence have changed. So the way there are going to be fundamental changes. I see social consumption going down dramatically because, so much of our consumption is for social causes, for, whether it's envy or it's appreciation or whatever it is. Self-consumption, where you're consuming because you need to survive, whether it's food, whether it's technology, whether it's, books, entertainment, whatever it is, that's going to increase. The other key influence I find is the whole business of pivots. There are new pivots. So earlier, for instance, you and your family would have one kind of, let's say, relationship. But like Alpana was saying earlier, you're now having a relationship with your extended family. And suddenly, people are getting together. So what they can't do physically, they're doing virtually. And virtually, there's no limit to the number of people you can include. In real terms, you may not want to meet them face to face, but in virtual terms, you're happy meeting with them. So suddenly now these circles are getting wider and wider. Social media, the influence of social media is just, horrifying in the way it's actually changing people and changing opinions, influencing communities. And so that's a glue. In some ways, it's a glue because it brings together people who otherwise have nothing in common but hate somebody in common, so that brings them together.
My last question is, before we close, I wanted to check how do you see what have been the big learnings for you in this whole phase? Before that, if you could briefly answer to the issue of productivity and efficiency, what's been your experience?
So I have a startup, and in a startup, there aren't older processes that you're following. So this allowed us to create very new processes, and we didn't have to spend any time trying to figure out how to manage. I meet a lot of businesses in various forums, and they tell me there are two kinds. There are one who are just going ahead and changing, including one business owner who told me that he had 1,000 employees. They didn't let a single person go. But what they essentially managed was that they took their 300 frontline employees and augmented the rest of the staff by adding to the frontline employees. So in virtual effect, they actually had more sales people than they had people in the back end, and they innovated in that manner. I think that fundamental way of thinking differently. There are other kinds of business owners who say that when things become normal, I'm not sure if that day is coming, because maybe there's going to be a new trajectory from now on, and businesses will have to wake up to that. So the fundamental thing is for businesses to start understanding risk better. And risk is not something you can plan for. Risk is something you can only be prepared for. You don't know what's coming. There have been smaller things that have come, everything from demonetization to various include political upheavals, or God knows what happens in America on November 3rd and what happens geopolitically. The one thing is clear, that the future is unpredictable at a faster pace. And the only thing we can do is to be prepared for that unpredictable. So more agile ways of handling behavior, more agile, I think even when it comes to real estate ownership, having agility with rentals rather than ownership. Agility is going to be perhaps the one big value that's going to now being the underlying value that determines a lot of our choices and a lot of our behaviors going forward.
So the way I see it is slightly different. Okay, I think the entire, let's say, lockdown period needs to be broken down into three sections. The first section was where everybody was reeling from the shock, right? So there was lockdown, things just went downhill. People didn't know what was going on. They were at home. They didn't know how to cope with it. So the first section was, and of course, add to that the fact that we had the whole migrant crisis. People had to leave. Transportation was a big problem. That period was a 2-month period. After that, what happened is people started coming around and saying, okay, this is going to be our life in the foreseeable future. And therefore, let's plan. See, human beings are amazingly resilient. So after they get knocked down, then they come back and say, okay, theek hai, now we plan. And so the next phase was the planning phase, where organizations said, okay, if you don't have, and let's not forget, most people didn't work with laptops. They worked with desktops, right? So if you're a company, like you're a services company, like let's say my company, people had desktops. Now, data was on a server in the office. Now, suddenly data has to get on to the cloud, and you have to give everybody laptops. So the next phase was actually gearing up for the work from home, gearing up for a new culture, gearing up for a new reality when it comes to, let's say, economic or, activity or enterprise activity. The third phase is where we are right now. And the third phase is where there is acceptance, okay? There is clarity that nothing is going to change in the short term. And maybe this is the way we are going to have to live for maybe a year, 2 years. Nobody knows. But now everybody's finally getting comfortable with the thought that this is the way it's going to be. And this, in my view, is the most productive phase, because when organizations, employees, families, people understand that, okay, this is the way it's going to be, then there is a coming together, there is a convergence. And there is this ability to say, let us together build something that allows us to sustain till there is clarity about what happens next. And so, in my view, productivity has dropped down dramatically because people have not been used to it. I mean, how can you expect somebody who was used to getting out of home at 7 or 8 in the morning, going to office, working through office? How do you expect them to be able to work the same when they're at home? So there was a huge dip in productivity. But now I see signs of change. I see the willingness and the ability among people to say, okay, I have to work, I have to deliver. So they have to deliver the output. And what happens is certain businesses, like let's say the media business, the consulting business, the services business, we find it easier to do. The problem is in manufacturing.
Yeah. Kalpana, would you agree that productivity is now, is your experience exactly the same or is it slightly different?
I think it's very industry specific. It's very category specific. So you can argue that a lot of tech companies or the ones with home delivery, they seem to have figured it out and they're far more productive than before. I think a lot of new age businesses are able to work virtually. Certainly startups like mine, I believe our productivity has been massive because we've been working remotely. And it's actually helped us. There are many things that we've done we would not have done if we had only a physical environment to work in. So it is industry specific. Certainly media agencies, advertising agencies, branding agencies are suffering. Business is down. So it's difficult to divorce productivity from revenue or from opportunity as well. And in often cases, there isn't enough work and therefore people are struggling. So it's a bit of mixed bag. And I don't think that for me, there's a clear answer one way or the other. My personal experience has been otherwise, for sure.
Okay, so interesting takeaways, I think, and very, very fascinating insights about living smartly. Thank you, Alpana, and thank you, Meenakshi, for your time for this panel discussion. And more power to women for India's Most Powerful Women Awards. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Many thanks for that, Rajiv, and a big thanks to our panelists, and of course, a big thank you to Bosch Home Appliances.
Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai.
Next session, MG Womentorship. Here, we look at how MG Motor is looking at building a pipeline of women leaders. May I please invite Mr. Rajiv Chhabra, Managing Director, MG Motor India, to tell us more about what they're doing.
We have been told and taught that the purpose of any organization is typically to maximize the value of shareholder. But at MG India, we believe that we need to maximize the value of stakeholders. And we include employees, dealers, and community environment as part of stakeholders. So at the inception, we thought about how do we compete in this cutthroat automotive environment in India. And we thought about 4 pillars which will be part of our DNA and the culture of MG India. You can imagine commonsensically technology and consumer experience being the 2, but then we thought diversity and community service will be another 2, which will lay a good foundation for us at the time of start itself. Within diversity, we talked about that how do we get more and more women employees, how do we make it a compelling place? And we did all kinds of programs, you can imagine, to attract good talent. We also started investing in girl-child education right from the day one.
Working in MG is an excitement in itself. The moment I step inside this company, I don't feel like I'm in a regular automobile company. The overall culture, ambience, the freedom that you get is really amazing.
Working with an organization which focuses on the society betterment and upliftment of the people, it brings a sense of satisfaction and achievement.
People from different backgrounds, different fields, they are working along with us. So it helps in nurturing our knowledge and skills while performing our tasks.
Just like in working in resonance with our passion. Working at MG is very secure and peaceful to me, and I feel very proud to work as a MG employee.
It is very amazing feeling, and I'm also happy with my work and I'm enjoying my work.
Try Her Back is a returnship program. It is a program for a period of 1 year.
If woman is passionate about the work, she can manage both the things, work life as well as personal life. Once I decided to work again and join MG, I found my life again. I'm so happy about it.
The life has been good. Now it's a mix of multiple flavors, family, work and fun.
So we have many initiatives. Now today, we want to start another initiative, which basically is mentoring women entrepreneur, or called Womb Mentorship. Now in this program, what we are talking about is that can we identify budding and existing women entrepreneurs who are in the area of underprivileged and marginalized women workforce. These entrepreneurs will try to provide an ecosystem to make sure that we can take care of underprivileged women of our society by skilling them in many areas. So this whole program is actually trying to make an ecosystem or trying to provide an ecosystem to these young women entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chaba. Very heartening to see that organizations are looking at building a pipeline of women leaders. And of course, as part of this initiative, MG Motor India and Business Today have identified women who've been working towards lives of thousands of underprivileged and marginalized women across Gujarat and Delhi NCR. MG Motor India will mentor 5 of these women over the next few months. And of course, we will be announcing the names of these winners over the next few days.
Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai.
When you change to an electric car, you reduce pollution, both outside and inside. Change what you can with the MG ZS EV.
डिशवॉशर है ना?
जितनी स्क्रबिंग उतनी सफाई।
इसमें आपके बेटे ने दाल मखनी जलाई थी, फिर भी चकाचक।
Bosch, Indian kitchen का dishwasher.
Our next conversation is on managing businesses virtually, where we've all been conducting meetings virtually. We've been signing contracts virtually. Movies are being shot virtually, in fact. So the last 6 months have pressed the reset button on how businesses are run and how we work. So this next panel is going to be looking at what are the learnings from these past 6 months. Has efficiency increased? What does it mean for productivity? And what does it mean to be an entrepreneur in these times of running meetings and running businesses virtually?
Welcome to this panel discussion on managing business virtually, which is part of India's most powerful women virtual conclave that Business Today is hosting. We have an excellent panel to discuss how to manage business virtually, and hopefully we'll come back with some insightful tips on managing this. So we have with us Ameera Shah, who is the promoter and managing director of Metropolis Healthcare. We have Anjali Bansal, who is the founder of Havana Capital. I have Frederick Vidal. He is the South Asia head and managing director for Oriflame India. And of course, I have Neeraj Bahl, who is the managing director and CEO of BSH Home Appliances. So what I'd like to start with is the pandemic made so many certain things practically uncertain, and one of them was going to work. I mean, going to work every day and ensuring that you were on top of your handling your businesses. What was the first thought that came to your mind as it became clearer that this is really a very long haul? And so what were the first reaction that you had in your mind? What did you plan? What did you think? Shall we start with that? Anjali, would you like to start with?
I think at the very start of the lockdown, the pandemic-led lockdown, the first thought was employee health and safety. That let's make sure everyone is safe and secure and in good health. And that goes for Havana, for my team at Havana, as well as all the other companies that I'm associated with as a board member or as an investor. So the first few weeks were all about just making sure everything is secure. The next piece was business continuity, very quickly, actually. And so there was survival and health of people, there was survival and health of business. And once all of that was then somewhat secure, we started thinking about new ways of working. And of course, all of this was unfolding very much in parallel, right? So new ways of working where you're not able to be together in the office. Mm-hmm. The office out of bounds for businesses that are financial and investing led, say Havana, for example, was not a big deal for us at all. Very quickly, all our people got used to working remotely, virtually, in virtual teams. We were having daily team stand-ups, keeping each other's morale up and work going. In more distributed operational businesses, whether it is a delivery or a Tata Power or a Voltas, for example, or a Bata which has retail, I think things were a little bit more complicated with lockdowns, the availability of labor, people couldn't make it to work, markets were closed. So I think there's a variety of responses and reactions that emanated from the lockdown. But for the most part, it's been incredibly resilient, very, very adaptive. It just goes to show how adaptive we are as a human being.
Neeraj, the first reaction when it appeared that this is a very long haul?
The first reaction was how to make sure that all our employees are safe, because that was the major thing what was to be assured. And so we made a critical, team which is there for factory, for R&D, for sales and marketing, service. Because not only our own employees, we also deal with 1,500 ISPs engineers who give service to our customers, and then we have approximately 1,000 sales consultants who are there on stores. So immediately, what we did, we procured 3 months mask, PPE kit, and sanitizers for all our team, and we supported our ISPs because they are directly there on their roles. And similarly, for third-party roles, guys like sales consultants, we have around 1,100 sales consultants on different stores. When you go to buy products, there are people who assist you. So we immediately increased their insurance, and I made sure that we covered COVID into that, and we also increased their insurance so that once stores are open, when these guys are traveling and they are not on our payrolls, but still it was our moral responsibility to take care of them. And of course, we were the only organization in the pandemic. People were talking about salary cuts, people were talking about job cuts, and it happened, very badly. And we also faced that in March because our circle starts from April for salaries, though our calendar year we work from January to December. So I decided otherwise, we gave the highest ever increment and the best ever bonuses to our guys because somehow we could anticipate that this is going to stay long, and it is very, very important to keep the morale of the guys high. So we decided otherwise. We gave the highest ever increment and we gave the highest ever bonuses to our people, and that's why our team is such a motivated team. This was the least expected from them, that they were all mentally prepared for anything or any eventuality, and we did the reverse. And that is paying us off, and we are doing a fantabulous job since the time the lockdown has opened.
Amira, what was your first, you are running healthcare business, and this is really, since both Anjali and Neeraj talked about safety first, this was your practically frontline when this pandemic hit.
So Rajiv, the situation was a little bit different for me, I think, than Anjali and Neeraj. Number one, I gave birth to a little baby on March 9th. Frankly, thank you. My first thought was protection for the child and honestly to get out of Bombay. So we actually relocated with our families to our farmhouse outside Bombay because the idea of being cooped up in an apartment for many, many months to come was just too tiring at that time. So that was the first thing we did. And that was the best thing we did because to be in greenery, to be in fresh air every day, gives you a respite from all the mental health issues we are seeing that's now coming for people, who tend to be quite cooped up and suffocated. So I think that was one very good thing that I think we did first. Second of all, I didn't have time to even think about my business. I mean, literally from the next day after my delivery, I was back home. And I had to get on working with the government to plan the testing policy for COVID for India. So really, I spent the next 2 weeks in working in 8-hour, 9-hour, 10-hour days, planning the policy of how we're going to tackle COVID. And it's only when the lockdown happened and we started testing, we encountered so many problems because one, there was no clear policy in place, unfortunately, center or state. We had no time to ramp up and invest in infrastructure. There was a global resource crunch of equipments, materials, and all of those things. And therefore, getting those equipments and materials itself was hard to start testing. Being able to motivate our employees to come to work in the middle of COVID and actually put their lives at risk and put their families' lives at risk to support everybody else was a huge part of the motivation that we had to do, with employees on the ground. So actually, these were the steps that we had to take first, much before we came to employee safety, much before we came to business continuity, because all those things actually probably came to our minds a little bit later because we had so many sort of very short-term, urgent, critical things we needed to do. And I think, just getting people on the floor. I mean, we've had our employees sleep in the lab. We've had them beaten up by police, trying to get to the lab or trying to get to people's homes to collect samples. And what's been very interesting about India is that health is not a central subject. It's not even a state subject. It's a municipal district subject, which means in Bombay alone, we have something like Greater Bombay, we have 9 separate municipal districts. Which means if I have an employee coming from Thana or an employee coming from Bombay, the rules are different. the rules for testing patients in Bombay and Thane are different, and these change every few days. So you can imagine if we are operating in 210 cities across the country with these kind of challenges, we had to be so nimble and agile that every morning you have to be ready to make a complete business transformation in any city where the rules, nothing is clear. So I think it's been an excruciatingly challenging time. I think March, April, May, June have been really, really tough. Much more for the employees than for me. But I think it's like we were talking about, brought a certain level of resilience to the fore, and more than that, brought purpose to the fore. I think when you're working in healthcare, you can't be just working for compensation, for designation, for ESOP, for value. You have to be working for something beyond, and that's what brings that special something to healthcare, which is empathy. And what I've been really happy to see is all our team members bring that empathy to the fore and really take care of millions of people.
Frederick?
I think very good of the three speakers before me. I think when, your question, let's go back to the original question, which was, how did you feel when you realized this was going to be a long haul? Yeah. And I think, my initial feeling was probably much more basic than safety and other things. I mean, it was just hell, how is this going to work out, kind of, So it was bewilderment and shock and kind of mixed into one. Then, of course, safety and these other aspects, I think, took the next seat. But, of course, during March, April, and May, we were not allowed to ship any of our products anywhere. But obviously, we then had to figure out, hey, we cannot have zero revenue for an entire setup in a large market like India. That will deplete our profits big time. So we kept selling. We just couldn't deliver. And then, with the first unlock, we had some 3 lakhs of orders sitting with us. So to try and, combat that type of enormously poor service levels, we are still struggling with.
Okay.
However, in the business I'm in social selling, we are actually seeing a large incremental growth at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And our business is such that you can actually do our business from home entirely, from your mobile phone. And we have all these tools, and we had them pre-pandemic also. So I guess we're a little bit lucky from that point of view. But it was a couple of tough months, and we're still sweating. It's far from over, and safety is still, of course, a major concern. But yeah, that would be my answer.
Let's try and understand what was the biggest challenge that you faced in this whole, from March to now. What has been the biggest challenge for you?
I think that the biggest challenge was to get many of our people. I don't know how well versed you are in the social selling industry, but we basically sell our products through brand partners. And we have more than 3 lakhs of said brand partners only here in India. So that's an army of individuals, and many of those have been with us for a decade and even longer. And how do you quickly get those people to move their business, which traditionally has been run by meeting individuals face to face and, face to many, so to speak. So that was a large challenge. How quickly can you train nearly 300,000 individuals to now run their business from home? And we're talking about training everybody. Your housewife in Kharagpur, who is 55 years old, who has maybe never ever worked a day in her life, to somebody who's 25, who knows everything. So I think it's been an enormous challenge, and one I am very proud that we have tackled in a smashing way with just an enormous amount of interactions. And I think that's the key recipe to also keep some type of culture alive when you are not able to meet.
Okay. Anjali, biggest challenge?
I think from an investing point of view, evaluation of entrepreneurs and new investment opportunities when you can't actually do diligence in the field or meet people, so you're taking a bit of a call. I think the response to that has been, it's tended to be invest behind already known entrepreneurs or people. Other biggest challenge is keeping supply chains running. I think, keeping for our companies that are in manufacturing or logistics, access to labor and getting labor back and comfortable and looking after their health and safety, and then keeping manufacturing running.
Neeraj, biggest challenge?
So there were two biggest challenges what we faced. One was, absolutely zero turnover for 40 days. And April was a washout. And, these 40 days has resulted us into shifting of all our goals, all our strategies, all the bottom lines and the top lines were completely, disturbed. So that was the challenge what we faced. Then I think our management was kind enough. We spoke to Germany and this was happening everywhere. So they gave us a very simple message that just don't bother about the turnovers and the top lines, because top line is not going to bother us. Just be aware of your bottom lines, because top lines are anyways, unnecessarily in case bottom line is not, we're not meeting the bottom lines. So what we did, there were two challenges in front of me, as a leader, how to cut costs. And as a leader, I don't believe in checking out people and cutting costs that's the simplest way a leader can do. So that was the huge challenge what we faced. And then we decided to cut on marketing costs, to cut on travel, cut on trainings. So because we knew it's going to be, it's going to last long. So travel was completely unnecessary. We could save costs from there. And we did save a lot of costs from travel. And then everything shifted virtually. And then, of course, we never expected that after 10th of May, when things will open in India, as Frederick also mentioned, that they were sitting on 3 lakh orders. My average dishwasher selling, we are the market leaders in dishwasher with approximately 60% market share. We never expected that it will surge 3 times, 4 times, and whatever quantity, I don't know. God was kind enough that we had planned that in January to have some stocks with us, because we were anyways planning big for dishwashers, coincidentally for this year. And I had a stock of 90 days, which is approximately, 12,000, 13,000 units with us. That was our average sale. So demand has surged so high that even after supplying 45,000, 50,000 dishwashers, which was a total market size of 63,000 in India, till last year, and being the leader, we are still short by more than 20,000 dishwashers. And supplies became challenge. Our front loads became challenge. Everything became challenge as far as global supply chains are concerned. So that was a huge thing to manage. But surprisingly, the business has thrown us a huge opportunity as well. So when people started, working from their homes, and when men entered kitchen, so they realized a lot of pain of women. Okay, so it's a huge surprise to us, and that people are not buying the cheap things. People are now going for expensive and the branded things, those who can afford, right? Earlier, if they had compromised with their washing machines because of maids, now they had no option but to change it to a best washing machine in the market, right? Because now it was them who has to do it. And when you use it yourself, you want the best. So my premium category all of a sudden shifted to more than 35% to 40% contribution. Of course, that added a lot of cushion to us in our profitability. And when we revised the forecast, thankfully, India is performing one of the best in the world. And we have surpassed all our forecasts by 9 million euros till August of whatever we committed that we will do. We have surpassed that by 9 million euros already. And things moving pretty fine.
Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai.
When you change to an electric car, you reduce pollution, both outside and inside. Change what you can with the MG ZS EV.
डिशवॉशर है ना?
जितनी स्क्रबिंग उतनी सफाई।
इसमें आपके बेटे ने दाल मखनी जलाई थी, फिर भी चकाचक।
Bosch, Indian kitchen का dishwasher.
If we move to opportunities now, I mean, in this phase, what is the biggest opportunity that came your way, let's say, and any big moves that you've made, for instance, and how did that come about? Anjali, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's been curiously opportunity rich, actually, across business lines. So I will speak about three things. Most large enterprises and startups, including some of my portfolio companies, have actually taken the time once we finished dealing with business continuity in innovation. So product R&D, creating virtual ways of working. So one of my companies, CoverFox, for example, we had to roll out a remote call center in 2 days flat. So it has led to a lot of customer centricity, listening to the voice of the customer, product innovation, product development, and the acceleration of direct to consumer. So direct to consumer building of digital brand and digital access. Some of the larger companies have actually spent time in thinking about what does this mean for the world, rethinking our supply chains, onshoring, nearshoring, securing supply. For Avana, it has been, we've been extremely busy evaluating new investment opportunities and actually have made a number of investments through this period. But the biggest thing that I would say that we've been able to do over the last 3 months is a platform called Unnati. We were asked by the government, Honorable Prime Minister asked Niti Aayog to look at how technology can be used to solve large problems. And a few of us came together and we were appointed as a panel and developed Unnati. So it's a full-fledged technology, digital-first platform that creates the access for both livelihood as well as skilling and other benefits to a very large number of people in India. So being able to pull a team together virtually along with Niti Aayog, develop tech, and anyone who has developed tech product knows how hard it is to do it if you are doing it with remote teams and not together. Do the go-to-market, and I think it's been a particularly opportunity-rich time.
Frederick, you did mention the opportunity. Any big moves in this time? Any big strategic decisions?
Yeah, I think we've had several. To be honest, I think the office centricity, like many companies, I think a clear revelation that we've been pumping in money here to landlords all over the world, whereas you can probably invest much of that money in driving digitalization and digital platforms for interaction. So I think definitely here in South Asia, we have already reduced over 60% of all our offices. And that's a significant number. And also travel. I mean, I think Neeraj was talking a little bit about it also. And traveling now, in my area of responsibility in this part of the world, I will not allow any travels for any type of business reviews. Those can definitely be done online, and people are now, very adapting and skilled to do so online. And the only time I will allow travels would be to build culture. Innovation throughout the organization is now popping up like never before. And maybe that's coming from kind of its top down, that we as bosses, all of us, allow this type of ideas because we realize, hey, I don't know as much as I used to before the pandemic. I know a lot less these days. I need help. And I think that's awesome, that's super fun for everybody. So there are lots of opportunities in this as well.
Yeah.
So we solved 1,400 complaints online in first 15 days of operations. That was a new learning for my service team. That was a new learning for the customer. And that was a new learning for us that this can actually throw us an opportunity. We are wasting so much of time, manpower, petrol, resources to just sometimes we go and there was a plug issue, right? But it costs us money, it costs us service costs, it costs customer, if it is out of warranty cost. So customers were also ready to cooperate. They cooperated with us. We made video calls, we made audio calls, and we solved 1,500 complaints. Overall, in the pandemic, we solved more than 6,000 complaints online. There was no need to visit. So that was an absolutely brilliant opportunity and the new learning for us.
Mira?
I think in terms of opportunity, I think the biggest thing has been the way people think about healthcare. So far, most ways consumers have thought about healthcare has been go to my doctor, follow whatever my doctor says, and follow it blindly. People have really not sort of empowered themselves on their own health. And I think with digital adoption and with doctors not being available in that physical setup, the rise of telecommunication in terms of teleconsultation, telemedicine, the rise of doctors engaging digitally with labs and hospitals, all of that, I think it's opened up a completely new world as to how healthcare can be in the future. Healthcare is a bit of a stodgy industry, so I don't think I'm going to see any hockey stick change. But I do believe that there's going to be a very nice gradual change with COVID acting as the catalyst for really moving healthcare from this very brick and mortar traditional industry to a more digitally enhanced, savvy industry. And I think that's going to do a lot of good for consumers and for patients and for doctors as well. Suddenly, we're seeing doctors who earlier were sitting in their clinics for 12 hours, 14 hours a day, are today saying that, look, why should I do that? I'll work from the office 8 hours and let me do 4 hours of teleconsultations wherever I am. And why do patients have to come and sit in my office for 2 hours waiting to see me? So I think this can really open up a completely new way of healthcare. With better analytics, more information, because one of the biggest challenges of healthcare was everything was on paper. Everything were in these big files that these doctors used to keep for patients in India. And I think now if we move away to more digital data, we'll be able to actually understand India's health data in a much better way, which actually we don't really understand today at all. So I think this creates a huge opportunity for medtech, for services, for data in healthcare. So I think the industry will boom over the next 5 years.
Okay, what did it do to the efficiency of the organization? What was your experience? Because that is one thing that is not necessarily worked out exactly the same way for every organization. So, what was the what would you say? Whether your organization became more efficient or less efficient, and how do you see this progressing?
So, look, I think it's different parts of the organization had different experiences, right? Because we are an organization which is very hands-on on the ground in terms of our centers. We've got 2,700 centers. We've got about 5,000 people. So the services arm of it, I think, was definitely more inefficient in the way that all the operational challenges on the ground of bringing people to work. We had to organize buses to transfer people to work because we've not had a single day off, right? The lockdown has been irrelevant to us, except the fact that it's created huge external logistical challenges. So how do you bring your employees to work? Where do they stay? How do they stay away from each other, from their employee safety? So I think that the retail part, the services part has been very inefficient. To Neeraj's point, if a refrigerator is not working for 15 hours, people will blow up and they'll get really angry at you. If you don't give them their report, which determines whether they have COVID or not, in 6 hours, people are ready to stab you to death. So how do you deal with that health anxiety that comes with being in healthcare? I think it was very challenging. I think from the corporate side of the business, I think we've been more efficient for all the reasons that Neeraj, Anjali all mentioned. Or Frederick mentioned that you don't have to travel. You can work virtually, you can work distributedly. Having said that, often the question comes up is, are you going to change this? It's very interesting to hear Frederick say that 60% of offices are gone because a lot of us are debating internally that, look, is this something that we want to fundamentally change for the future? And while I can see offices reduce, I definitely cannot see a world which is only virtual tomorrow. I think the interaction is going to be absolutely essential. Like he said, rightly, culture building will be very necessary.
Okay. Frederick?
I agree with Amira quite a lot. I mean, services have been super inefficient for various reasons. I don't even want to bore you with all the reasons. And, we're still struggling. It's not back in any way, shape or form. But, driving meetings and interactions and trainings have been enormously efficient. You start a meeting, it's always on time.
Yes.
And let's be honest, I mean, the physical meetings are not always on time. And, people come and they're a couple of minutes later, hey, I'm just going to go and get a cappuccino or whatever, And okay. And then you chit chat a little bit and a meeting starts maybe 15 minutes late. Here, it's always on time and much shorter. There's not so much chit chat. You get to the point, clear action plan, sign off, agreement, goodbye. But on the other hand, so that's very good. On the other hand, you miss the coffee machine discussions and, building relationships, and you miss those interactions that are oh so important in running any type of organization. So I agree with Amira yet again. I think even though we have reduced a bunch of offices, we will never see I don't believe so. I mean, you shouldn't say never, because 200 years from now, somebody looks at this and say, what idiots, But I don't think that, I don't think it will be entirely virtual. That was my point. Yeah. Thank you.
Anjali?
Well, I totally agree. I don't think it will ever be entirely virtual. But the the movement towards phygital that we are seeing in business models will also become a workplace model. I think we have learned how to be more effective working remotely and virtually. And see, there are many of us who spent most of my career, I've been in distributed teams. You have teams that are in different places around the world. So that skill set that people have developed, I think, is a new skill set that we will start developing even with local operations. The human touch, and the human touch is important for many things. One is culture building for sure, but also learning. And the apprenticing that happens for our younger people when they are in the office working shoulder to shoulder with their seniors and so on. And today I actually say, apprenticing goes the other way. I learn as much from the young entrepreneurs and my younger colleagues. And as I'm sure many of you have also mentioned. So I think that piece of learning, the human connect, and innovation, curiously enough, also requires that connect. So good technology product development, or good product development does not happen with people working in isolation. So I don't think we are ever going to become fully online. That said, the workplace model will shift. There is so much to be said for the sheer efficiency and productivity that we are able to do. Meetings start on time, as Frederick mentioned, and so on. Today you can be in Mumbai, Bangalore, and Delhi, and London, and Palo Alto, and New York, all on the same day without leaving your home. So not having to spend that time flying around for short meetings, I think I personally hope is here to stay. I think COVID has done more to reduce the carbon footprint of the world than any number of climate conferences did.
Neeraj?
Yeah, I fully agree with all the panelists. Of course, it's not going to be virtual, and neither I appreciate that. So meetings are more productive, no doubt about it, and they start on time. And people, at the same time, there is a flip side to it. There is no unnecessary office politics, So that's become better, actually, because a lot of people used to, talk to each other, and a lot of things used to happen which will not happen now anymore. Okay, so that's a good thing which has happened. But at the same time, companies need to understand, and we need to really, really respect people's time. Now, that doesn't mean that a new trend, what I'm watching is, that phone call has finished. For a normal phone call, when you can discuss with me for 30 seconds, why do you have to set up a Skype meeting for that? That's become a little monotonous and a little more computerized, which I don't personally like. Like earlier, we used to call someone, and now it has become so virtual that for discussing a 30 seconds job with me, a person is trying to set up a video call. Other day, I told him, look, we're still the same. Phone calls are the same. Human touch is the same, for God's sake. So that is one thing which I don't like personally. And going forward, yes, new learnings. Like I told you, unnecessary meetings will be avoided. A lot of video calls and a lot of infrastructure will be spent in offices on video conferences and video call facility, which is very, very important. Now people were missing it in best of the offices. So that is one good thing which is going to happen. Unnecessary travel, morning travel, and this morning evening travel, which was so useless. It used to get you so fatigued, unnecessarily spending 300-400 euros of the organization and doing nothing for a 30 minutes or a 40 minutes meeting. That's completely should be cut. But at the same time, human connect, creativity, and that bond is very, very important. You just cannot operate in isolation forever. So I wish these things go down and we're back on track from January 1st.
Okay, before we end, I wanted to ask about diversity because a lot of people can now work from home. Even those who may have retired, who are excellent in their work, can work from home. A lot of that, lot is coming back into the workforce. Do you expect this to help with diversity? How do you see this impacting diversity in organizations? Frederick, if you'd like to start.
I think you're onto something here, definitely, Rajiv. And I welcome. In fact, I had a discussion just a few days ago about an individual who turns 60 in a few months. And then his boss came to me and said, "Oh, unfortunately, so-and-so now has to leave." I said, "Why do they have to leave? Is there a law that they cannot continue to work?" No, there isn't. Okay, well, hey, if said individual wants to work, then why not? And 60 is, as a retirement age, quite low, I would say, in general.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel that the diversity will be helped. And you can even have functions like corporate affairs, legal, they can be entirely working from home. And perhaps in the future, those services are outsourced. And you can streamline your full-time equivalent even more and so forth. So I think there are enormous amount of opportunities to do more.
Anjali, diversity? Do you expect this to be, the organizations of the future to be far more diverse, with more people being of different kinds being brought into organizations which may not have been possible earlier?
Well, I certainly hope so. We've seen improvement in diversity globally, not just in India, but globally. And when I say diversity, I mean it in its fullest sense. Gender is one aspect of it. But creating people, with different backgrounds, different experiences, ethnicities, belief systems, sexual orientations, and definitely gender, also differently abled people. So this move towards a more phygital workplace, and that, at least in theory, should create more flexibility for people to be able to engage in work, in paid productive work. See, everybody works. And I say this every chance I get, all women work. It's just that a lot of them work at home in very productive work, but not paid. So for people of diverse backgrounds to be able to do paid productive work from their home, I think that has definitely got enhanced. We now have the tools. We have collaboration tools for teams. We have virtual interfacing tools like Zoom, Skype, etc., etc. We also now have organizations that have learned and managers that have learned to manage virtual teams and get productivity out of it. So I see no reason why actually this should not accelerate.
Neeraj, would you like to come in on this?
Yes, of course. There will be a lot of boost to gender diversity and people who are actually retired and still they can work, and also for differently able people and physically challenged people. I see a lot of opportunity. It is going to come in place, and leaders have now understood how to manage their teams virtually, how to keep them motivated. And I also agree with Anjali that yes, at the same, it has to be a balance now. At the same time, one good thing which has happened, a lot of time, women used to feel that they were called unnecessarily at long hours and all these unnecessary things which could have been easily avoided. Those things have come very good and handy, and they have now, they're able to spend time at home and also able to work. But at the same time, families have to respect that she's also working like them. And then apart from, giving all the domestic work and the childcare and online education for the kids, and if she has to work, it rather becomes more difficult for her than spending. She would prefer time spending in office than, multitasking at home for, 6 things. So it has to be a right balance, but it has thrown a lot of opportunities to a lot of people, and companies should be ready to adopt them, and they should be open to welcome these kind of people so that they have an opportunity to earn their livelihood in a much better and dignified manner.
Okay, so before we end, I'll take just one last question on this is your biggest management learning, management lesson from this entire phase from March to now? Neeraj, if you'd like to start.
One big management lesson, how to keep your teams motivated without even meeting them, and how to keep your organizations moving, and maintaining a right culture, as well as train their people in such an efficient way virtually. It's a big management learning for me. And I've also learned one thing, though it is not a management learning, that how difficult it is to do a household work and the office work together. That is a big management learning for me. Hats off to all the women in the world who are managing it so efficiently.
Anjali?
The power of youth, really. And being very open to new ideas, and the very rich learning environment that crises provide. So keeping antenna and your own sort of mind space open for new ideas and innovation. Needless to say, helping your teams adapt to virtual working has been another learning. But I think for me personally, at least, this is something I've been very used to, working with virtual distributed teams for a long time. But yes, actually for me, the biggest thing that I'm still working on is drawing that boundary as to when does work stop, because work has expanded and it is very interesting, enriching, innovative, learning, productive work. So it has completely expanded and seems to have taken over all my time. So I'm still working on that learning of when to draw the line and how to set boundaries. And as leaders, we have to set boundaries so that our teams can follow from us.
Right. Frederick?
I think a couple of revelations. One, that, the importance of innovation. We mustn't forget, there are so many companies in the graveyard that just didn't innovate and they died. And the importance of innovation really comes out when you face a global pandemic. And how do you survive in this clutter? And, some industries have advantages over others, etc., etc. You need to innovate. So I nearly feel upset with myself that I have not been better at this in the past. Twisting and turning every single aspect of your business, not the normal ones, top line, gross margin, bottom line, etc., but the abnormal ones, and we've made some severe revelations that I hope will be very positive for the future. And perhaps the second one that has confirmed something I've always believed in is, of course, har cheez mumkin hai. Everything is possible, and that's the attitude you need to have. And I think the ones that have that, they will drive their business forward.
Well, that was phenomenal. And with that, let me end this panel with thanks to each one of you, the panelists. You've been fantastic this afternoon. Ameera, Anjali, Neeraj, and Frederick, thank you so much for your time and spending this time for Business Today.
Well, that was very insightful. Many thanks, Rajiv, and a big thank you to our panelists.
Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai.
May I now please invite Ms. Mariana Johnson, Chancellor of Satyabhama Institute of Science and Technology, to please deliver the word of thanks.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a very interesting day at the Business Today's Most Powerful Women in Business Awards. I deeply commend the entire event organizers for putting up this event so professionally. And the discussions we had today, definitely it paved a way and it opened our eyes how people are managing their businesses, even in these crucial times virtually, to bring up their businesses. I deeply congratulate each and every winners and identifying them in time, because always appreciation in time, it changes lives. So on behalf of Satyabama University, I'm always delighted to join hands with India Today's Business Today Women in Business Awards every year. It's been an eye-opener. As a woman, I really appreciate and inspire and take home more inspirational stories whenever I attend these awards. Though it was virtual this year, never a miss, never a second missed. That inspiration was throughout the journey. So this entire event carries out economy, healthcare, communicate, and entertainment. And on this day, Satyabama University, as you know, which has been recognized as the top 50 university in the NIRF ranking for the consecutive 5 years, as well as we have also bagged the top 5th position in the private university concern by the Atal Innovation Ranking by the Government of India. So we are always delighted and we always stand by women empowerment. And my hearty congratulations to all the winners and to all of you who are watching this entire event. And I'm also really excited to look forward for the other 2 days, which is the event is going to be conducted. And stay always courageous, keep your spirit high, and always have that positive thought every day in your mind, which will definitely change your life. Thank you so much, all of you. Have a great day. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And with that, we conclude our day 1. And we'd like to thank our sponsors, presenting sponsor Satyabama University, powered by MG Motors, lifestyle partner Bosch Home Appliances, holistic beauty partner Oriflame. We'll be back tomorrow with our list of winners. Stay tuned.